You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch TV and movies about how the real villain was capitalism all along.
That is almost always what our movies are about.
Yes.
I'm thinking about it now, and like Empire Records, The Legend of Billie Jean, and they're the only movies we've watched that I can remember.
Gretchen Fox is the robber baron of Frogtown Hollow.
They're so poor. They're like Charlie Bucket poor.
Yeah. I don't know what Charlie Bucket is.
From Willy Wonka. Charlie.
Oh, Charlie Bucket. Yeah. Okay.
A child so poor his last name is Bucket.
Yeah, no, this one I was really excited and also nervous about. Oh, I'm Jodie.
I'm Andrea.
And you're Andrea. And we watched Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas.
We sure did.
I was texting with an old friend of mine earlier this week, and he had just found out what we were doing next week, and he said, I knew exactly what you were going to be doing, and when you said it was your favorite Christmas movie, and I said, I have been preparing my whole life for this.
It's funny, because I do love this movie too, but I think you have a much more personal investment in it. It's all of the Muppet movies and specials are my favorite Muppet movie or special.
Yeah.
This isn't the one I've watched the most. I've seen it a bunch.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a long time. So it was interesting to revisit it. I mean, it's probably been a good 10 years or more since I've seen it.
Yeah, this is the however, you know how everyone has the one Christmas movie that they watch every year. Like this has been mine since I was about 5 years old.
Yeah,
like I don't know that I've missed a year. I've made every partner I've ever had watch it with me. I've insisted on friends coming to my house to watch it with me. Like I own it on DVD. Like I don't have a DVD player, but I own it on DVD
just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
Yeah, I think Home Alone might be my only, which I just realized I haven't watched this year I'm going to do that as soon as we're done recording, because I do watch it every year, and I don't think I've missed a year. But I think that's the only one. I have a bunch that I rotate through behind me. Listeners, when we get that video Patreon, I'm in the kitchen. I'm in Fozzie Bear's mom's kitchen. Muppet Family Christmas is maybe my favorite of the like Muppet specials like these, the ones that aren't full length movies, and that aired on TV rather than getting a theatrical release. I think this one might be my favorite. But Emmet Otter is also, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, the amount of emotion I have around this movie is actually making it hard for me to even know what to say. Because, actually, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that maybe what we should do is start with sort of each of our relationship to the Muppets in general, like what Muppet properties are the most important to us, like how we grew up with them or did or didn't or whatever, like just to establish like where we come from with this. I don't know if you want to... Because I know that you are a Muppet person.
I'm a Muppet obsessive.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that.
I know I say things like what I'm about to say a lot, but it's like the Muppets are more important to me than just about anything else. And again, I know that if you listen back on the show, like you can hear me saying that about a lot of things, but I think the Muppets have probably been with me the longest. I don't remember a time when I didn't love the Muppets. They've just always felt, in the same way that most of the things I say this about, where it's like Pee-wee always felt like a safe place for weirdos. The Muppets always did too, but the Muppets have always felt really sweet and loving to me in a way that some of the other, like Pete and Pete, I talk about a lot. I love Pete and Pete. I don't know that it feels like safe and sweet in the same way that like the Muppets do. Like think like Gonzo singing "I'm going to go back there." Oh, I'm gonna cry. Oh, here she goes. We're 5 minutes in.
Oh wow! I thought I was going to be first.
Well, this is what I love them so much. And I'm not even very discerning. Like I loved Muppet Babies when I was a kid. I really liked the new show. I really liked Muppets Mayhem a lot. Like it's hard for me to be critical about the Muppets.
Yeah. Did you watch the Muppet Show when it was on originally?
Well, I
Like,
wasn't born when it was on.
I mean, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
But I
know.
watched it as it aired otherwise, and as soon as
Okay.
I could own it, I did. So I know the series backwards and forwards. It's, you know, the Muppet movie is one of my favorite movies. I've watched it a bazillion times.
Yeah, and as many times as I've seen this movie, there was a lot of background that I didn't know. Like, this movie, we talked, our little log line when we started doing movies in the first place was like movies that are basically our pop culture DNA and how we got to be who we are. And we've talked about a lot of the movies that for me were like my teenage pop culture DNA. If you like open up my body, like if you did an autopsy, like this movie would live inside of my body. Like I have seen it so many times. We had cable when I was really, really young because my dad was obsessed with sports. And so he just like paid for all the cable channels, even though we really couldn't afford it. And so I had HBO when I was really, really little. And so I saw this maybe the year it came out, maybe the year after. Like I was born in 75. This came out in 77. Like I feel like I saw it when I was about 3. Like,
well, I think,
and just never stopped seeing it every year.
Right, because I think its first year, it's weird to think of it as an HBO special. I know it was like it got a release in Canada first, and then the next year it came to HBO. And I grew up, I don't know how much we've talked about on this show, but I grew up with my grandparents. I lived with them and my mom too. But point being, for some reason, my grandmother was obsessed with TV and with movies in a way that is surprising for someone who was in her, like, she, you know, I don't know, maybe not, but like we had 2 VCRs in every room that had a television so that we could steal movies from Blockbuster. She taped everything on HBO.
I don't think that's typical, to be honest.
We had well, the thing I'm about to say really isn't typical. She had bookshelves full of binders that listed all the VHS tapes were numbered, and because she would just tape, like she would go through the TV guide every week and circle the movies she wanted to tape and the TV shows that she wanted to tape. So all of our VHS tapes had numbers, and then you could cross-reference the number with the binder. I kept wanting to say bulletin. My brain was so close to the right word to see what was on it. And so
you lived in a video store.
I kind of lived in a video store. Like we had, it was crazy how that just became her hobby. And I say all that to say, like, anything that aired on HBO from the time a VCR was invented, we had recorded. So it was played on HBO the first couple of years, and then it moved to ABC in like 1980. But this was the only thing I watched every single year. I would watch, like, you know, the Snoopy Thanksgiving and Christmas movies. But this and like the claymation stuff that was on ABC were the two, of course,
that really were a part of my childhood. I like have a very vivid memory of like sitting on the floor of the living room watching this with my parents, and like, you know, I mean, we'll talk, I'm sure, quite a bit about the music in this movie, but that's what did it for me. You know, I was a kid that loved music, and oh my God, like fucking Paul Williams, man.
He's unreal.
I've got a lot to say about the music. I can't get over it. Even last night. So we both rewatched this, obviously, to talk about it. I rewatched it last night with a friend of mine who'd never seen this movie, which was a dicey proposition.
Well, because
I was a little nervous.
I haven't told you this yet, but I told one of my friends we were watching this, who she's also a huge Muppets fan. And she was like, man, that movie is too sad now. I think she said it's like a slog to get through it because it's just about, and it's not just, but it is.
Hard disagree.
But it is very much about a poor family really struggling, which it's true. And so, but I wonder if.
But they have love.
That keeps you warm at night. But there are hardwood floors. in this room with no rugs, and my dog is making so much noise. And so I wonder if you, like, how did your friend feel about this movie?
She loved it. She found it incredibly charming. She loved the music. She did not have, from what I could tell, I mean, I think she probably would have hid it if she had any real negative reactions to it.
You were staring at her unblinkingly for 53 minutes.
Yes.
So it's hard to say for
Checking
sure.
her reactions to everything. No, what I was doing was I was sitting across the living room bouncing in my chair to the music and like singing along. No, she seemed to really love it. And like, you know, she works with kids. So I feel like she kind of, and like, you know, thinks a lot about children's media and stories. So I think she was the right person if I was going to have someone over that hadn't seen it. She was the right person to watch it with because she really did find it delightful. Like, I get it. I mean, you know, I read an article when I was doing some research about this by someone who had lost their father, and it changed everything for them about watching this movie because of, you know, Pa Otter not being around anymore. And like, I've lost my father. I don't know what it is about the magic of this movie. I cannot have negative feelings about it. I cannot find it slow or sad or any of that. I find it just magical and delightful and perfect in every way.
Yeah. I think I can
And I understand that that's not a reasonable thing.
I love this movie. I think it's very sweet. I'm also delighted by it. I think what is so fun to me is to see something that in a lot of ways isn't a stereotypical Muppets movie, but still has so much like, I don't know, Muppet like essence running through it anyway.
Yeah.
We should do two things. One, we should recap the movie probably. And then the other thing is I want to talk about its origins because I think they're really interesting in terms of, and sort of the Muppet canon up to this point.
Yeah.
So should we do that now?
Sure. You're the one doing the recap. Go for it.
I am the one doing the recap.
Don't get it wrong or the podcast is over.
Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas is a movie about Emmet and Ma Otter who are struggling to make ends meet in Waterville.
Well, they're technically in Frogtown Hollow.
Frogtown Hollow, you're right.
Neighboring Waterville.
Neighboring Waterville, you're so right.
I'll try not to correct you this whole time.
No, please do. The movie, I'm trying to decide if let's save Kermit. We'll just talk about the center of this movie.
Yeah.
So Ma and Emmet Otter are, like I said, struggling to make ends meet. Ma she has like a laundry business, which relies heavily on her wash tub, and Emmet does like odd jobs around town for a quarter here and there when he can.
Kind of poorly, it seems.
Yeah. In fact, one job where Ma thought he made money, it turns out he was fixing stairs that he in fact broke. So we meet the two of them. They have a very sweet relationship. They spend most of their time together. But at one point when Emmet is hanging out with some friends and Ma is hanging out with some people, they both find out separately, right, that there is going to be a like talent contest in town, the prize for which is $50.
$50.
Which Emmet decides he wants to use to buy Ma a piano because he'd never gotten her a real gift. And she decides she's going to win and buy, because they're both very musical, she's going to win and buy Emmet the guitar that he's had his eye on. It's got mother of pearl inlays.
Got mother of pearl inlays, man.
$40.
Which I think in today's math is like $200 and something.
Okay, so it's
for a poor family, that's a pretty big Christmas present.
Exactly. But here comes the issue is Emmet and his buddies decide they're going to start a jug band. Emmet's going to play the washboard bass or the wash tub bass. And to do that, he needs to put a hole in Ma's wash tub.
Can't put a hole in that wash tub.
And Ma decides she needs something nice to wear. She doesn't have anything nice to wear. So she sells the tool chest that
Puzzle tool chest.
Puzzle tool chest that Emmet uses to do those odd jobs around town. So now it's high stakes.
Yep.
One of them at least has to win.
Gotta win.
Or they're both, I mean, what are they going to do?
But Pa would take a risk.
Pa would take a risk. Although, it's so funny. So, also running parallel to this is there are these hoodlums from River Bottom who
Hooligans.
they're hooligans. They're just kind of around to stir up trouble. They're the most Muppety. They're my favorite part of this movie. There's a Chuck who I have always thought was a bear. He's a stoat. I learned that this week. There's who else is in the gang? Jodie, I got him. It's Chuck Stoat, Stanley Weasel, Fred Lizard, Howard Snake, and Catfish. I'm looking at the I pulled up the Muppet Wiki, and it says the band members include Chuck Stoat on keyboards. I'm giving something away. Stanley Weasel on guitar, Fred Lizard on drums, Howard Snake on bass, Catfish for visual interest.
Amazing.
Amazing. So the band,
Catfish, the go-go dancer.
I mean, so the group of these hooligans have just been around town causing trouble. They're not even from town. They're from River Bottom. They're just coming in to
sounds like a
trouble.
little wrong side of the tracks kind of thing.
Little bit. I'd be interested to see this movie from their point of view. And they also enter the contest. So Ma sings.
Turns out they spend a lot of time practicing. It seems.
Yeah, because Ma sings a beautiful song. The Jug-Band has a song planned, Barbecue, and it turns out right before them some little, I don't even know what he is.
I want to say he's a gopher, but I could be wrong.
He's like some kind of muskrat. What do you call all those? Mustelid?
I have no idea.
I think that's right. Yeah, mustelid. He's some kind of mustelid. It's a diverse family of carnivorous mammals, including weasels, badgers, otters, martens, and wolverines. He's something like that. And so they can't do that song. They have to pivot, and they do this other song, Brothers, which I much prefer.
I think they're both perfect.
I get every song in this movie is perfect. That's just Brothers is my favorite, I think. And then Last Minute Entry, the River Bottom Nightmare Band, and they rock the house.
Yeah.
Upsettingly,
the house down.
Their win is earned. Like they really crush it.
They really do.
And Ma and Emmet Otter lose. They lose.
Yep.
No wash bin, no wash bucket, whatever. No
wash tub.
Wash tub, no tool chest.
No hole in the wash tub, Andrea.
That's right. Forgive me. No tool chest. And then
they fucked it all up.
But they don't feel bad about it because they've got love in their heart, and they did what they thought that Pa would do. And Ma realizes that the song she was singing and the boys' song work better together. And so they're all singing it together, which I really love. And it does, as you're listening to it, you're like, oh, these were both halves of songs. Like you don't really realize it when they're singing them, but obviously they've been written to be performed together, right? And that's when the mayor, or he's not the mayor, right? He's the owner of the
Doc Bullfrog.
Doc Bullfrog is the owner of the restaurant in town.
Riverside Rest.
And he comes out and hears them along with the other judges who said they didn't win because they were great, but they just needed a little extra something. That little extra something was bringing the two songs together. They get offered a gig playing music at the restaurant.
The Riverside Rest.
The Riverside Rest. And Ma says, it's regular work, get regular pay, which I really, really liked.
Got a check.
That's right.
She's
Good
a practical lady.
Hell yeah. And the movie ends with them. The movie basically ends with them playing at the restaurant on Christmas Eve.
And eating mashed potatoes.
That's right. Do they have mashed potatoes?
You got mashed potatoes.
And that's the movie.
Yeah.
Depending on when you found it and where, you might have Kermit the Frog opening and closing it, and also and sometimes you might also have him narrating throughout. There's like
for a while
really
there, for a while there was a version that Doc Bullfrog introduced.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember that version.
Interesting.
It wasn't the one that I saw last night when I watched it, but for a while there, it was
Amazon Prime
Doc.
has it's all as far as I know, it's all back.
Yeah, I think it's back to the original
with Kermit on a bike, which although I think the Kermit narrations in the middle were, I think the original airing didn't have those, because originally it was on HBO, so it didn't have commercial breaks. Something I was reading. So he's there to reset the scene at different moments where it fades out, where it wouldn't have just that first year or two. I could be wrong about that, but I think I read that somewhere.
I have the Muppet wiki that goes into all the different edits. It's very detailed.
Yeah, well, it's because
it talks
so
about
different, atypical.
Yeah, it changed a lot. Yeah, so basically in the original version, didn't have Kermit's narration, but I think it was introduced by him.
So you get just
1980
Kermit on the bike.
Yeah.
Which is my favorite thing, is Kermit on a bike.
I mean, how could it not be? But in 1980, they aired it on ABC. And so in this edit, Kermit's narration was added, I think, because of the commercial breaks. And then there was another edit in 96, they took out his narration. And then in 2005, when they released the collector's edition DVD, which is the one that I bought, the Kermit the Frog stuff was removed because Disney had the rights to Kermit. This just made me mad at Disney.
It's all so convoluted.
I know. And then it was another version that came out when it aired on ABC Family in 2015. So, if you're curious, we can link to this. There is literally a comparison table.
Oh, of how much Kermit is in.
So the bicycle scene was in everything but the collector's edition DVD. The narration was in only the 1980s ABC airings. It has literally what is in what version as a chart. It's incredibly detailed. Yeah. The talent show scene in and of itself is one of my favorite things that's ever existed.
So should we squirrels just spinning around?
The flying squirrels.
So good.
So should we talk a little background before we, go any further? Because it is interesting the way this got put together.
Yeah, it's super early it's pretty early in the Muppets history. I think it's between seasons 1 and 2 of the show.
Yep.
It's before the Muppet movie.
Yep.
It's also, so previous to this, the only two I'm saying major comparatively releases that they'd done were Hey Cinderella and the Frog Prince, the Frog Prince is one of my favorites. I love it so much. Emmet Otter is based on a book, Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas, which I've known that for a long time.
Yeah.
And I've always kind of chalked that up to being why it feels so different. The characters look exactly like they do in the book. What I didn't know until today, as I was looking into the book, is that it's by the couple who did the Francis books, which I love.
Yeah.
Bedtime for Francis and
it's Lillian and Russell Hoban.
Hoban, yeah.
He was born in Pennsylvania to Ukrainian Jewish immigrants.
Lansdowne.
And Yeah, and so he wrote the story and Lillian did the illustrations. Somebody gave me, I think my friend Rachel gave me a copy of that book for Christmas one year.
Aw.
It's really adorable.
Yeah, the illustration.
But yeah,
I loved the Francis books when I was a kid. So it's weird that I never knew that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read that, so the book was written in 1971, or published, excuse me, in 1971. And it was like, they were in the middle of a divorce when it got published.
Yikes.
Which is kind of sad.
It's their rumors.
Yeah. But so Jerry Joel adapted it for the film. It sounds like it was like a 12-day shoot. It sounds like it was crazy, but an utter delight.
I can't believe they did this in 12 days.
I know.
11 of them were takes out front of the music store.
Yeah, from the drum. I didn't know this. I knew about obviously I'd seen the bloopers a million times, but apparently the reason that he was so insistent on trying to get it right was because when they did it in rehearsal, it landed absolutely perfectly.
Perfectly, yeah.
But they weren't recording.
Uh-huh.
And so he was determined to get it right.
I know that it can do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, that sort of loopiness, when you get to that point, is so fun. It's just so...
That's what I mean. I feel like... So I have this quote from Paul Williams when he says... So, because Paul Williams, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about him, but he had been a guest on the Muppet Show, and this was his first sort of time fully working on a project with Jim Henson. And he says, when I walked onto that soundstage in London and it was like, oh my God, I found my tribe. Recalls Williams, 82, of his first encounter with Henson and other collaborators. It just, the way that he talks about that, the way that everybody talks about the environment and that group of people.
It's amazing.
He said, it's like a family. I managed to stumble into the sweetest bunch of people ever. Both the furry felt ones and the voices and hands behind them are just the nicest people I've ever worked with.
That's so lovely.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I mean about it being a little different from the other things that are so important to me. Like, it is, everything about the Muppets are weird and so unique and so strange and so like celebratory of that fact. And then also there's just so much heart and so much love.
When you were talking earlier about how this is adjacent to the type of Muppet content or whatever you want to call it that we're used to, I think it's because when I think of like the Muppet Show and I think of the Muppet movie and all of that, there's heart there, but it's like heavy, heavy, heavy on the hijinks. Yeah. Right?
They're
like
so
hijinks
zany.
are really important. Mm-hmm. And there's hijinks in this, but they're not the priority. They're not like in the front, they're not front and center.
It's also that Ma and Emmett have the sweetest faces.
Yeah.
And I love the Muppets, but name one with a sweet face.
Yeah.
There aren't any.
Rolf
is perfect. But
I'm going to cry just thinking about Rolf.
But he doesn't look like a little critter that you want to scoosh his little...
Yeah. Frank Oz, when he was talking about this specific thing, he said it's a chancy thing that Jim always did, which is take a chance on real purity and sweetness. We didn't want cloying, we don't like cute, but sweet is legitimate.
Yeah.
And Jim just went for it.
That's what's really incredible about this too, is it's other than when that little speech at the end sort of is a little pat for me when she's saying like I should feel sad, but I feel pretty good. Like like that's a little bit. I'm like, yeah, but you guys are kind of screwed, so it's okay. And there are moments in the movie where another movie wouldn't do what this movie does, where like the scene where they go sliding, and he says, Emmett says something, I'm sure you'll know. Emmett says something about Pa left us something, whatever, and Ma says, well, he left what he could, or something like that. She like doesn't let him get overblown with it. I forget exactly what she says, but there are a couple of times where she checks the like kind of like romanticizing of memory about Pa in a way that is like pretty grounded, and where other movies like this wouldn't necessarily do. And I think that's what stops it from being too saccharine.
And you could say that like her reaction at the end when they've lost you know, the wash tub and the tool chest is maybe unrealistic, but also I think it fits with her character, which is very balanced for the most part. Like, she's nervous about stuff, but she also seems to be pretty steady.
That scene when she first gets...
You're very nervous.
I think that's my biggest laugh. It's so... The delivery of that is so good.
You're terribly nervous. Yeah.
When she, like, pops back out to say that.
Yeah.
Is really, really, really good.
I just posted that on Instagram, like, an hour ago.
That's another thing that makes... It is a little strange, and it always catches me every time I watch this movie to hear just a regular ass person's voice come out of a Muppet. Like, she's not doing a voice. That's just how that, right? Or maybe she is actually, but she's not doing,
is actually. So,
but she's not doing a Muppet voice,
right? But she did work with Jim Henson because she's from New York. The person who is Ma in the movie is Marilyn Sokol, and she's from New York, and so she did work with Jim Henson on getting like sort of a different dialect,
right? So she's doing like a dialect or an accent, but she's not doing a character voice in the same way that like Frank Oz is or Dave Gold.
Yeah, we should talk a little bit about who's who, because I think it's interesting to think, because you know, in Henson world, people come back over and over again and play some of our favorites. So we've got Jerry Nelson as Emmet Otter, Duck Bullfrog, Melissa Rabbit, the Weasel, I'm not sure which Weasel, and Yancey Woodchuck. We've got Frank Oz as Chuck. But he also... Did you read about this? The way that Ma Otter was done?
Yeah, because he's voicing her in the outtakes. So you do hear what his Ma would have sounded like. Yeah,
so he apparently recorded all of Ma's dialogue, and then basically it was replaced by Marilyn Sokol. Her singing voice in this is just so beautiful.
Yeah, it is really beautiful.
And then Dave Goelz, who ends up playing Gonzo, is Wendell.
I just love...
who I love Gonzo maybe my favorite character in this. Yeah. There was an interview with him when he was talking about playing Wendell, where he said he'd only done one season on The Muppet Show and was kind of a beginner. And then there's like some behind the scenes. He said, you know, Wendell had a crush on Emmett's mother. He just loved her and he wanted to spend time with her. And it was all kinds of strange, but that was just off camera. So there's like a whole off camera plot line that he's invented that Wendell was in love with Ma Otter.
Oh, good.
Which when you when you go back and now like watch the movie next time, like I think you can see it.
Yeah. I
think there's a vibe.
I feel like that feels true to me.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
He also played Catfish.
That makes me really that makes me really happy. The Catfish is so funny because he starts out and he's in there's just like a pool for him in the back of Chuck's car, and then when they show up on the snowmobiles and he's in a bucket on little skis.
Yep.
It's really, really good. And then when they're on stage,
in a tank when they're on stage.
Visual interest.
Yeah.
Did you read this oral history on sci-fi.com from earlier this year that was published?
Yeah.
There's some fun stuff in here. It's just from a couple of weeks ago, not even 10 days ago. And Goals talks about working the Catfish, and he says, I'm going to read a little bit from here. A lot of the things that were built were standard puppets. Catfish was easy. We worked with a rubber glove inside the fish that was glued to the bucket that he lived in. And when the River Bottom Band was playing in the show, my fish was in a clear plastic cylinder, a big tank. I was sitting on a chair on a forklift truck behind it, all blacked out, and I was working through a black curtain. It was a scuba glove glued into the tank so that I could put my arm into the scuba glove, and somebody out in front would put the catfish on me. But I was trapped. I was just sitting there with my arm glued to this tank wondering what would happen if somebody came along and accidentally let the forklift truck go down. If that went down, my arm would have just been severed at the shoulder. I was a little worried about that. I kept saying, who's working the forklift truck? Don't do anything. It just, the history of the Muppet performers being shoved into precarious positions to get the shot. I just feel like there's so many stories.
Oh my God.
And so many pictures of them with like their head turned at like a, I don't know,
Yep.
90 degree angle, 45, whatever. I don't do math. Angle, like hunched up under something with their arm up over their head. And it's amazing.
Those bloopers that we love so much, right? Like that's Frank Oz and Jerry Nelson under there that entire time. So like in the bloopers when Ma like falls over, that's literally Frank Oz just being like, my fucking arm, you guys. Like, come on.
I guess we're kind of assuming that everybody just knows what a Muppet stage typically looks like, and maybe they don't, but typically...
Well, I think we should talk a little bit about the technical in this movie, because it's not just a typical Muppet stage either. Like, this was when they, like, tried a bunch of stuff that they hadn't done before.
Yeah, it's cool. It seems like everything from, like, working with Paul Williams to some of the more ambitious stuff they did here, it seems like Jim Henson was using this to try to test a lot of things to see if they would work for the Muppets, like the family of Muppet movies, like whatever going forward.
This is the first time that we saw their feet, for the most part.
Which...
Don't you criticize the way their feet move.
It doesn't matter, is what I'm going to say.
I know
they look matter. When you see their little legs going, it looks crazy. It does. And not only, I was going to say, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's that it's so good. Like, it looks crazy, and I love it. And I think they know. Yeah. They know that looks. They had to have known at the time too. I just think Jim loved, because some of the stuff that they do just feels like this is just somebody who loves making movies and figuring out the way they do, for example, the marionettes where they would film the scene and then wipe the top out and just replace it with that scenery, but without the like bridge built in.
Yeah.
It's something like a high schooler could do. Yeah. Like, it just is like it just seems like, well, this is a fun way to do this. And like their little legs look crazy. But I love something that I've always really loved about the Muppets is that like they have never pretended like there weren't people working really hard to bring the Muppets to life. Yeah. And that the performers are often as much a part of the history of the Muppets as anything else. And that's so different from like Disney, like the Disney park characters, right? You'll never see them. You like,
yeah.
No,
you're totally right. Like, they're not allowed to take their heads off ever, right?
Right.
And meanwhile, there's a million pictures out there of like Frank Oz with his hand up a puppet, like standing next to a stage. Like, they're not trying to create any, like, they're trying to create an illusion in the film, but they're not perpetuating this idea that like this isn't people making this.
Right. Yeah, I think the only thing, and I don't know if I actually don't know why I'm sure that they've said this million, is that like you'll never see a Muppet just like flopped over anywhere. Yeah. Like that's the thing where it's like, with the Disney parks, it's like, oh, we don't want to break the magic for the kids and fine, whatever. But I really love that the Muppets are like, no, it's not that we want to like trick children into thinking the Muppets are, that there isn't like a lot of work that goes into it. Like, I don't know. There's something, it's different.
This is going to sound fully crazy, but I think that to the people that worked on these shows, and I'm obviously speaking for people that I don't know at all, but I think to them, the Muppets are real.
Right.
And so why would you see one sort of flopped over? Like,
right. The Muppets are real, but what helps to make them real are the people who...
Yeah. Like, if you've ever talked to anyone who has worked, like a human that has worked with Muppets in any sort of entertainment, they always say that, like, you literally forget that there's a person there instantly. Mm-hmm. I was listening to somebody, I wish I could remember who this was, a comedian who had met Fozzie Bear at like some sort of interview situation and literally I'll see if I can remember who this was, but basically he said that he immediately like forgot there was a person involved and started telling Fozzie Bear how much he meant to him as a comedian.
I would do the same. I know I
Yeah.
would do the same thing. It would be so easy. And I think part of that is that I wouldn't be surprised to see I've had on my vision board for Left of the Dial, our music, the studio portion on my vision board has been to get the Mayhem specifically, Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem in the studio.
Yeah.
And let's just say in some alternate universe that were to happen, I think the reason it would be so easy for me to like forget that there was somebody there animating those Muppets is because it wouldn't be a shock to see them there because we're so used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. There were a number of things they did differently on this production. We talked about the marionettes and the like wiping of the background so you couldn't see the strings for the most part. But also, like, this was the first time that their special effects designer had rigged up like remote puppeteering too. So when they're in the rowboat.
Typically when you see the Muppets, what you're seeing is the stage built up high and then performers underneath and pulling out bits of the set and then coming
their
up.
shoulders.
Exactly. But obviously, you know, they have those incredible scenes with Ma and Emmett on the river. Boat. So the like wider shots and stuff, right, are remote.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing this properly, but Foz Fazakis is the special effects designer, and he created this mechanism that allowed for remote puppeteering. So as the boat was going by, his puppeteer controlled him from solid ground, like his mouth movements. Mm-hmm. And he also rigged the rowboat to move with Emmett's paws. So they said when it appears that he's rowing the boat's actually rowing him. Yeah,
I like that there are a few different moments like that. They also talk about opening the curtain at the talent show. It's the same thing. It's the rope pulling the Muppet, not the Muppet pulling the rope.
Yep. Yeah, apparently Fazakis was a huge part of the Muppets and especially Fraggle Rock. It's also rumored that he was the namesake for Fozzie Bear, though that's never been confirmed.
Oh, cute.
What an amazing claim that would be.
Yeah.
To have someone like that named after you.
I know.
Oh my God.
The dream.
This was Jim Henson's first time using marionettes at all in his filmed programming.
It's so silly. There are sometimes where their legs don't even move. They just kind of like glide.
When they're walking on the ice and flopping around.
It's so good.
It's the best. It is the best.
Yeah, it makes me really, really, really happy to see them just...
I was cackling last night when I was watching it with my friend. I was just like, I can't... Thank God she understands this type of humor and love for this generation
kind
of television.
Thing, yeah.
She got it. But
I also would have watched... I would love to think there are a million outtakes of them throwing those Muppets down that slide.
Oh, I would kill to see that.
So good.
That's the only problem with the outtakes we do have, is it makes me want all of the outtakes ever filmed for every Muppet, property ever.
Have you watched the ones for Christmas Carol?
Yes.
Those are good too, but they're not... It's just the two of them losing their sweet Jesus. It's like...
My feet are stapled.
Hubba what?
Who are we, Ma? I could care less. It's so good. I mean, like, that's the thing. Frank Oz knew that his voice was never actually going to be in this movie, and yet he's ad-libbing every single moment just to crack everybody up.
They're just when somebody comes over to reset and one of them is like, "Did you see that? Did you?" He's like just looking directly at them. Like, man. Oh, it's so good. It's just so good.
I feel like anybody that's worked in sort of like a collaborative artistic environment, just seeing that, you just get the magic is an overused word, but how magical it must have been to be a part of that group of people creating something in the way that they were doing it.
Totally. And there's still nothing like it. It's still, even watching, like I said, I think reviews have been pretty mixed on Mayhem, Muppets Mayhem, but I still think like even that, like there's just nobody. No, And I know it's like a whole new crew for the most part, but I don't know.
Well, and it's the whole, Jim Henson died in what, 90? Muppet Christmas Carol came out in 92 and he was already gone then. That was a Brian Henson. And so, I remember when Muppet Christmas Carol came out being like, well, this isn't the real thing.
Right.
And I love Muppet Christmas Carol now. Like I see it as part of that lineage, but it, for those of us that grew up with like the Muppet Show specifically and this movie, there is a roughness to the production that like Muppet Christmas Carol, I was watching it the other night and I was like, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look like there's a lot of really bad
but there are special effects.
But it's better than it's more ambitious than.
Though I think Jim probably would have grown with it. He was interested in
Yeah, he was always trying new stuff. But I think that there's just a sort of such a deep appreciation for Jim Henson that it was always going to be hard after he passed for people to experience the work of the people that came after him in the same way. And that's not fair to them.
No. But I do think it says a lot about the community that he built and the sort of like, I don't know, I don't know, ethics isn't the right word because I have no idea, but the spirit or whatever that was built into it, that for the most part, even if the stuff that came later has felt different for people and isn't quite the same, and you can go back and watch the Muppet Show and it is a different thing, but that it's still like there's still a lot to love in a lot of the later stuff.
Definitely. Oh my God,
it
definitely.
Feels like it comes from like it shares a heart, even if the execution isn't always exactly on.
Well, and I think it has something to do with, and I'm kind of coming up with this off the top of my head, but so I found an article where Frank Oz talks about how he's not involved with anything Muppet related anymore because of Disney, basically. And he basically just says like, I'd love to do the Muppets again, but Disney doesn't want me. And he said he doesn't watch either the Muppets or even Sesame Street today, citing the lack of heart in the characters. The soul's not there. The soul's what makes things grow and be funny, and I miss them and love them. And like, I both get that, and I also think that the people that are making Muppet stuff today are doing their damnedest to try to keep that magic there. It's just, the capitalism is the villain, right?
Right, exactly.
The Disney corporation's like, corporate overlordness over it may have squished some of the magic out of it. He says there's an inability for corporate America to understand the value of something they bought. They never understood with us. It's not just about the puppets. It's about the performers who love each other and have worked together for many years.
Totally.
So that's kind of sad because Frank Oz is like such an original part of this team. I found some really lovely quotes from Cheryl Henson, Jim's daughter. And basically he never stopped being extremely proud of this movie. Like a lot of people, when they get to be, much more successful, will look back on early stuff but he was always super proud of this movie. It won a Cable Ace Award, I think, and was nominated for a bunch of Primetime Emmys.
That's cool. And well deserved.
There's a couple of sort of current updates that we should probably just mention. I haven't seen any of the. So what I'm trying to allude to is there's been a stage show.
Oh, right. Did you watch any clips or anything?
Cannot. There was a stage show in 2008 in Connecticut that was a partnership between the Jim Henson Company and something called iTheatrics. And it's a mix of stage actors and puppets. And it ran on and off for a couple years, and then it was revived last year or this year. And it's currently running in Chicago. And a friend of mine sent me stills of the performers from it. I can't do it. I can't. They're so fucking creepy. I don't want to see people in these roles. I just don't. I don't care. I understand, like, a new generation. The kids might like it. These are not supposed to be people.
It's very Zoobly Zoo.
Yes.
It's like that kind of like.
I hate it.
Alluding to the animals, where it's like a prosthetic nose and some face paint kind of thing. It's a little
somebody
uncanny.
said it looked like they had clown makeup on.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like you said, maybe it works for some people, and maybe it's lovely. I don't know. I watched just like a little trailer for I'm not sure which production. I don't know if it was Chicago or what, but
yeah, it's currently in Chicago right now. I love the fact that this is getting love, that this property still touches people's hearts and stuff. It's got to be puppets.
And I think, and they worked with Henson Studios to remake some of the puppets or some of the Muppets that they are using.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can call them Muppets if it's not like.
I mean, they're made to be exact replicas, but
it just feels different.
I know. The originals are in the Museum of the Moving Image. I've never been to go see them there, but I literally saw a picture of the puppet of Wendell and I got super emotional.
I know. I've never been, but anytime somebody I like follow on Instagram goes and shares pictures and stuff, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
I know.
So there's the stage show. And I think part of the reason we do need to talk a bit more about Paul Williams, I think. But I think, I'm using this as the stage show as a segue here, because I think the reason that people find the material worthy of doing this with is a big part of it is the music, right?
No Christmas music.
Nope.
Which I kind of like. That this is a Christmas movie because it takes place over Christmas, but like...
Yeah. This sort of, like you said, this was a little bit of a testing ground, right, for Paul Williams and Jim Henson working together. The next time they worked together was for the Muppet movie. And you can feel, I think, a little bit of moving right along in Brothers.
I wrote the same exact note down. 100% that song feels like a precursor to Moving Right Along.
Yep.
More than any other song in this movie, that's the one that really you can really feel.
Yeah.
There's also the first song in this movie that's just about their fat otter.
So I mentioned to you earlier that I listened to a podcast about this movie earlier today, and I got angry because they were very critical of too many things in the plot. One of the things they were critical of was that this song was like fat shaming.
Content warning, fat shaming?
And fat phobic. And I'm like, okay. It's not my place to decide if that's actually true. But I don't know. They were mad that they didn't take this song out of the stage show.
What I was about to say about the song is that it's so, he's having so much fun with the words and melody. It's so playful, and it's like chasing itself around, and like, I never really thought about what the song was about until this time through, because it's so just fun and silly, and it's so much more about like the fun it's having rhyming with itself and surprising the listener, where you're not like quite sure which line is going where, and like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's so over the top.
Yeah.
Like
her one bathing suit after she dies goes on to make, and then they list like 12 things. Like,
yeah, we've made curtains and handkerchiefs and clothing for the poor.
Come on.
Yeah. It's great. It's just great.
It's just... It is funny too, because like I said, this movie is very sweet and very earnest, and it's not cloying and it's not saccharine, but it is just so almost painfully earnest. But it opens with that song.
Yeah, it's true. It's watching this movie with the subtitles on, which is something I do now because I'm old, is a very different experience. Because when I was a kid, I would try to like sing along to all the songs, and I definitely did not have all the words right. And that song is one of them that I just didn't fully get. Yeah, until I started looking at the lyrics, and I was like, oh. Yeah. It starts with this, and then they go into Ain't No Hole in the Wash Tub. And then When the River Meets the Sea, which they sang at Jim Henson's funeral.
Yeah, have you watched?
I have.
It is so. I mean, I watch parts of it all the time. And like, oh, do I need a good cry?
I mean, I when I watched it today, I was kind of like, this is so dark. I was like, I kind of want someone to sing that at my funeral. I'm not even kidding. No. That was a legitimate thought I had.
I mean, it's dark, but it's only Muppet dark. You know what I mean?
It's so beautiful.
Like, because it's such a beautiful song.
Yeah. And then we get Barbecue, which is a banger.
It's a banger, but it is an odd choice. There's
fucking great.
Snow on the ground. I love that it's such a popular song in town that somebody else also.
Yeah. Oh, like, everybody knows Barbecue.
It's just a local hit.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
So funny.
And then there's Our World, which to me is the sappiest.
Yes.
It is. And Brothers, which obviously you said it earlier, they were meant to be one song. Paul Williams wrote that as a song with two back and forth kind of conversing parts that he then took apart for the filming of the movie so that they would fit together like that.
It's very cool.
And then River Bottom Nightmare Band.
That song rules. It's so good. I love them. I love them so much. We don't brush our teeth because the toothache helps us stay mean.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny watching it with subtitles last night. When that comes on, it says, did you watch it with subtitles?
I didn't. I always do. That's so weird.
It says something like a Jimi Hendrix sounding song starts. I was like,
kinda. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just so cool. They're like little kid bad, you know? Like driving around, causing trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, with their loud car with that backfires. It's so good. There's also, did you see the Hear the Lost song?
I did, yeah.
If I Was Born in a Trunk. Apparently a reference to a Judy Garland song from A Star Is Born.
Oh, that's really interesting. Because did you know Paul Williams wrote some of the music for the Streisand version of A Star Is Born?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's apparently a reference to that, and it's supposed to be like a body burlesque style song. They apparently used it he finished it for the stage show, and the whole thing is in it. And apparently, because it's sung by is she a muskrat or a weasel? It's sung by the woman
sort of mustelid.
Yeah, yeah, right, sure, a word I knew before today. It's sung by the lady that runs the music store. And apparently in the stage show, she kind of does a striptease, which is a thing I don't really want to see a Muppet do.
I mean, it's funny that they finished it because I watched Paul Williams talking about it.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah. And he says like it wasn't finished because it was just supposed to be part of the talent show. Maybe one day I will finish it and I'll send it to Liza Minnelli.
Apparently that interview was a little while ago.
Yeah, it's funny because I read about it first and then I went to YouTube and I read the thing about it's supposed to be like a kind of body burlesque number. But when it first starts, it's really like buttoned up.
Yeah.
If you will. Yeah. And then it breaks out into this big body thing.
Pre-Muppet striptease.
Yeah, exactly.
Yikes. Yeah.
That song feels like you could see that being a number that either a Muppet or a guest on the Muppet Show would have done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. So the one place that I lack in research is Paul Williams' other work. Like, I know, obviously, that he was involved with the Muppets.
Yeah, well, he had like
forever.
a pretty But he also like wrote songs for the Carpenters and Three Dog Night.
Right.
And like I said, I don't know how many different versions of A Star Is Born, but it's like into every generation there's one, you know?
Yeah.
It's like one of those things. And for Streisand's version, he wrote, I think, all of the music for it.
But he also apparently wrote the lyrics to the opening theme for Love Boat.
I did just learn that. That was the rest of that stuff I've known, but I feel like, I mean, maybe I did know that at some point. It seems like something that wouldn't have gone under the radar for him. Like, I think maybe I just knew and forgot, but
so funny.
That's really funny.
Yeah, he has had a very long and storied career. He wrote music for a musical production of Happy Days that debuted in 2007.
Apparently, yeah, that's a weird one, right? Like,
he appeared as an animated version of himself in Dexter's Laboratory. I don't remember that.
That was not one of my...
Right, we talked about that was a cartoon area that you weren't super involved in.
Yeah.
So when I was watching this last night with my friend, she was like, I feel like I've seen some of these characters here and there after the fact. And one of the big places where that actually happens is during the Rainbow Connection finale in the Muppet movie. They're all there.
Good.
They're
so
all
good.
there.
I mean, they had them.
Yeah,
you might as well use them.
Yeah.
They're also apparently in some like Muppet Show episodes, just without clothes, just playing animals, which is also very funny.
Yeah, Mayor Fox's puppet was reused in several episodes. He was in the Bob Hope episode with unclothed versions of Old Lady Possum, James Badger, Will Possum, George Rabbit, and Nat Muskrat.
I would argue those versions are the clothed versions, and that a natural state of a muskrat is unclothed. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. They do appear now and then since they had those puppets. Yeah, I can't find fault with any of this. I'm continually delighted by it. It's just a perfect Christmas movie to me, especially because it doesn't lay too heavy on the Christmas part, right? Like, theoretically, if you go all the way back in the tracing the story itself, you go to the original book from 1971, which is actually based on extremely loosely based on the ideas in O. Henry's Gift of the Magi. Yeah,
I'd like to ask you about that.
Okay.
Because you say loosely, and it is loosely, because they do... Don't you think, if there's any... I shouldn't say don't you think, that's leading the witness. It seems to me that if there's an issue to be had in this movie, it's that I'm so afraid with you right here. It's that Ma sells her, it's her her dead husband's tool chest.
Yeah.
But it's her son's tool chest, and her son sells her wash bin. Wash tub. Why do I keep doing that? And don't you think there's something...
Are you going to say that she doesn't need new clothes for this?
No, it's just that, like...
That is something.
Emmet have sold his own tool chest if he needed... Although he didn't need money.
Well, he's a child. Also.
Because Gift of the Magi is, I got rid of my prized possession to get you something nice. And this is, I got rid of your most important possession to get you something nice.
But the story by O. Henry, it's actually closer than I think.
No, because he sells his watch to get her combs for her hair. She sells her hair to get him a chain for his watch.
Right. And so they're like kind of tied. They're both tied to the other person, I think.
But it's their prized possession.
Sure.
It's a sacrifice of something of theirs as opposed to something of the other person's.
Right. Yes, that is true. But I think because Emmet is a child.
There's also they do this again in, there's one of the Sesame Street Christmas ones where, I forget what it is exactly, but Bert and Ernie do it. Bert sells his paperclip collection. I don't remember exactly, but it also happens in Sesame Street. It's a tale as old as time.
Yes.
I'm picking nits with that one, but
yeah.
But it is a little. I'm just like, I don't know. I think if I were either one of them, it's mutually, you know what? It works out though, because if I were either one of them, I would be annoyed, but I couldn't be, because if I were either one of them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because she says her confession always makes me laugh. There's something about the way she says that she sold the toolbox where it's like, she's just kind of like, well, better tell you now.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, you can see what I did to your wash tub.
Yeah. One of the little details I really appreciate in this movie is how hard they tried to get the timing right on the music when they're moving the puppet's hands on the bass. It actually is in time. Yeah,
they're in general, the Muppet performers are really good about that kind of thing.
Yeah, really meticulous.
We were just talking about this off mic. I don't know why I feel the need to say that whenever that's true. You guys don't know what we're talking about off mic. But within the last couple of years on Left of the Dial, I had Patrick Kotner, who is a comedy producer of he's the Chris Gethard Show, and now he's a podcast booker, and he does stuff for a bunch of improv shows out in LA, and he's worked with the George Lucas Talk Show forever. And he's also a big Muppets fan, and he did Left of the Dial a little while ago, and we did his top 5 or 6 Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem performances, and we talked a lot about it is so impressive that they somehow, the Muppets are pretty good musicians, weirdly, despite not having finger articulation.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. It's just it's really cool to watch, because you could easily phone that in and nobody would care, but it's just another detail. Exactly.
It's really there.
It's very cool. It's just very cool.
I just wanna give a shout out to Wendell here. I fucking love that little idiot. They're really biting today. I don't know why. He's, I think, my favorite character in this whole thing. Emmet is a little bit of an annoying little guy sometimes. He's adorable, but I don't know. Wendell's the best.
Wendell is apparently, and you can hear it, I'm not saying apparently, this is an obvious thing once I say it, was the inspiration for Beauregard, the janitor at the Muppet Theater.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He's kind of dim, but sweet. And
also, apparently in the story, in the book, he is a raccoon, not a porcupine.
Oh.
His little quills coming out of his jacket are one of my favorite things in this whole movie, so I'm really glad they made him a porcupine.
It's really, that's a very silly little detail.
Yeah, it's the best.
Have you ever been to, now this is just going to devolve into me talking about the Muppets more generally, but have you ever been to the Muppets 3D at Disney World?
No.
I think it's still there, and it is one of those things where eventually they'll shut it down, because maybe now there's more of a reason to keep it around, but it has just been around forever. And I've only been to Disney World twice. I went once in 3rd grade and then again for my senior trip, and it was exactly the same both times. And in 3rd grade and on my senior trip both times. So you're in the Muppet Theater. You're watching a screen, and then there's different 3D things. There are bubbles that come out and all kinds of stuff. But then at the end, Sweetums, a full walk around Muppet, comes out, and both times I cried. Sweetums is my favorite. I
love Sweetums.
But seeing, because other Muppets, if you see Gonzo or something walking around, it's clearly someone in a costume. But because Sweetums is already a big walk around Muppet, it was just there he is. There's the guy.
So is he your favorite all-time Muppet?
Gonzo is, but Sweetums is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's it depends. It depends, but they're my 2 favorites, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because I've got Wendell, but I also have Rolf. I adore
Those
Rolf.
are 2 very good ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Those
Rolf's
are
in my, if I had to do a
ones.
top 10, Rolf is 100% in my top 10.
Yeah.
He might be top 5. Gonzo, Sweetums, Rolf.
I mean, Gonzo's in my top 5 as well.
I would need some time. Kermit, of course.
Weirdly enough, Kermit, I don't know if he cracks my top 5. He's in the top 10, but I don't know if he's in the top 5.
That's because everybody, I think, is a Miss Piggy or a Kermit, and you're a Kermit, so it would make sense that he wouldn't be.
Okay, I thought you were going to say I was a Miss Piggy and I was about to quit this podcast.
No, and that's why it would make sense that then Kermit wouldn't be one of yours.
Okay,
you know, Miss Piggy's not one of mine.
Okay, because I was about to get real offended.
No, everybody's got.
Yeah, I mean, Animal's in my top 5. I know that's like, or top 6 maybe. That I know that's a cliche, but like,
but he's
I can't
perfect.
help it. He's perfect. Yeah,
he's so good.
Yeah, but Rolf, like the soul and the sweetness in that dog is just too much. It's too much. I was just watching, which, speaking of something that doesn't really hold up, I was just watching the John Denver Muppet Christmas episode from 1979.
I haven't, I mean, I've listened to the soundtrack a ton, but I haven't seen the original since
parts of it,
I was a kid.
The interactions between him and the Muppets definitely hold up, but there's a lot more like Christian Christmas stuff in it than I remembered.
Oh.
Which I'm less inclined to be excited about. But his interactions with Piggy are ridiculous.
Oh.
But I loved those other Christmas specials they did as well.
They're so good. Next year we'll just do all Muppet specials.
I mean, I watched this year. I watched Muppet Christmas Carol yesterday. I watched Emmet Otter today. I watched the John Denver one today. Like all in the past week or two.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know why. I think because my Christmas is kind of low key this year that I was like, I just need to like pump myself full of this like Christmas nonsense spirit.
That makes sense.
Well, now that we've strayed from Emmett, we've actually kind of started to stray into what we were going to do for next week.
Oh, yeah. How did we get here?
I have no idea. But we are next week going to do a little interlude between this and our return to Yellow Jackets, which will be our sort of like best of 2023. I don't know if people like this kind of thing. I tend to. I like to listen to people's best of lists because then I find things that I missed. So we're just going to talk about our favorite TV shows and movies and podcasts. And like... You're going to talk about music. I am not going to try to recommend music because my taste is questionable. But
I think you saw more movies or more TV than I did this year, so you might take the lead on that one.
I am fully a TV show person, more so than movies, anything else. Like and some of the TV shows I think that I'm going to recommend I have probably mentioned before on this podcast, but I would love to explain why I think that they're worth going back for, especially because we may have a slow content year coming up in 2024 in terms of like the dead space from the strikes is kind of creeping towards us, and all the stuff that is in production now is going to take a while to get to us.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of stuff you can look back on from this past year and get into.
Yeah, so we'll do that. If you have stuff you'd like to recommend to us and to your fellow listeners, email us at watcherspod@gmail.com.
WatchersPodNJ at Gmail?
I always do that at watcherspodnj@gmail.com, or you can message us on Instagram. I'm not always great about checking those messages though. I will eventually, but I'm much more likely to see an email than an Instagram message.
Yeah, I feel like this week is going to be pretty... Actually, the reason I wanted to do this in the first place was because I was listening to a couple of other podcasts and their top 5, top 10 lists of the year. And I have now I have a list of movies pulled up that I'm probably going to watch this week while I have some downtime. Cool. So it was like, gave myself a little assignment based on some other podcasts.
That's fun. I love that.
Yeah. So, yeah, so that's going to be next week. We are done with our December run. And then after that, we're going back to season 1.
We're kind of coming up almost on a year.
I
mean, like, not almost.
Yeah, I know. It's nuts. I was reading off the movies we did last night to my friend who was over, and she was like, you guys have been busy. I'm like, yeah, I guess we have.
Yeah.
So.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Quite the list.
I'm going to try to time my season 1 Yellow Jackets rewatch with my original season 1 Yellow Jackets
Well, when did
watch.
you have COVID?
It's the first week of January, I think.
Really?
I think so. So yeah, so maybe I will try to time I'm going to have to, because we're going to start pretty soon.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, speaking of Yellow Jackets, there was an article in Variety about a week and a half ago that said that they're deep in the writing, which is not fast enough for me, but, you know.
It's exciting to know they're working on it.
Yes.
It is not what we planned when we started this show. Our show is now a movie watch podcast where sometimes we cover Yellow Jackets.
I know. They don't have a date yet for when filming is going to start, so we've got a ways to go.
We'll stay busy.
Yeah. Yellow Jackets season 3 production status. Nothing yet.
So next week will be our recap, and then we'll remind everybody, and then the week after that will be Yellow Jackets season 1, episode 1.
Yeah, the pilot.
Hell yeah.
Great fucking pilot.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited to go back and be able to talk about all of that with the knowledge of season 2. And
every now and then, the Jersey in your voice jumps out more than others.
Is it when I'm talking about Yellow Jackets?
It was the talk.
Oh, did I say?
You said talk.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's one of them for sure.
Shout out to all the New Jersey is the World people that are gathered right now in Clifton.
Busting open Pinata Beach.
Oh my God. I'm so sad I couldn't go.
So
Anyway, greetings from Frog Hollow. It's been nice to hang out here for a bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually been really nice to be given a reason to do kind of a deep dive into this thing that is such a part of my like cellular structure that I've never done any real research into, because I know it like the back of my hand, and I never felt like I needed to. But
that's been the case with a lot of the movies we've watched, where I'm like, I just take it for granted that I know everything because it's been with me for so long.
Yeah.
I should also say, also, if the audio sounds different this week for you guys, I'm not in my studio. I'm just in an arts.
She's in Frogtown Hollow.
I'm in the Poconos, and I'm literally in a like wooden. It's not really wood paneled walls, but it might as well be. It's like a very rustic lake house on the lake. Like I'm overlooking. It's dark now, but I'm overlooking trees and a lake. Like it is the closest that I'm ever going to be to Frog Hollow. So it was really kind of nice to watch it here, of all places.
Yeah. It definitely, when they were skating on the river, it made me sad because I know that it's not going to be cold enough to skate on the lake when I'm in New Hampshire. It's not going below freezing.
I just would never recommend skating on a lake, so
it's like one of my favorite things to do.
That's so scary. Have you not watched Yellow Jackets?
I have watched Yellow Jackets, but I am not the size of a white moose, so I'm not going to fall in.
All right.
It's fine. All right. Well, happy holidays, everybody. We will see you in a week for a fun what should you check out next year while we're waiting for all of our favorite shows to come back. And thanks
so much for hanging out this year.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Super fun.
Wow, I sounded really insincere. I'm just tired. It's been so fun.
Had a great
It's been
time.
Awesome. Yeah. Wow. What a good time we're having. All right.
It's been The Watchers.
We'll see you next week.